There are only 3 more days of the COP29 summit, and delegates are facing pressure to deliver on key promises like climate finance. All this week, we've been taking a look at the talks and how British Columbians are working to combat the climate crisis here at home. Young people have been at the forefront of the fight against climate change for years now. That youth movement exploded with Swedish activist Greta Thunberg's Friday school strikes in 2018, inspiring marches around the world. Here in Canada, hundreds of thousands of young people have taken part in strikes across this country. Joining us to talk about the youth climate movement is Annabelle Liao. She's back in BC this week after attending part of the COP29 or a conference with the organization ClimaTalk. We appreciate you being here. Thanks very much. First of all, what work were you doing in Baku?
Yeah, I guess to give some context, ClimaTalk is a youth-led NGO that has volunteers in over 30 countries. And so our mission is to demystify climate policy for youth. And what that looks like on the ground at COP29, on one hand, is following negotiations and tracking negotiations very closely to make sure that we are able to summarize and release briefs in plain language so that youth back home have an easier time following these high-barrier conferences. On the other hand, another part of the work that we do is interviewing a lot of the youth to amplify the voices and the work that brought them to this conference.
What was the mood there among the young people that you spoke with?
I would say the mood when I was with other youth or when youth are surrounded by other youth, it can be very exhilarating, it can be empowering. In negotiating rooms where, sometimes when we're listening to world leaders speak, it can be disheartening or tense or almost blagging, I would say.
How hopeful are you, given what you've seen at the conference? And you still have colleagues that are there finishing up the rest of it, right?
I do, yes. In terms of, I guess, the outcomes of the negotiations themselves, there are a lot of things that can make people feel, I guess, disempowered or not fruitful. We saw, for example, Argentina withdrawing after a couple of days of the conference. But in terms of the youth movement and what youth inclusion looks like at COP, it can be pretty hopeful, I guess, to see the youth movement as a collective realize that climate change is inextricably linked to everything from human rights to economic health. And on the ground, it was definitely very hopeful to attend actions and although primarily a conference focusing on climate change, to see actions where youth were rallying and protesting for, the genocide in Palestine, for example, or for infringement of land rights or the way extractive companies treat local communities.
All right. Annabelle Liao, we appreciate your time and your perspective. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.